You are joining for the 2023-25 Reengagement Collaborative Grants, the RCG, Request for Applications Information session today. So thank you again for being here. Next slide. And so today's session overview, we're going to do some welcome and introductions here. I'll cover some of the kind of the general information about the RFA as well as eligibility. Then we're going to turn it over to Molly, who will cover a lot of the details of the scope of the grant itself. And then Jared will close us out with the application and evaluation session or sections of the process, as well as how to apply and SM apply and the general timeline. Next slide, please. All right, so just real quickly, we're going to do some introductions of YDO and ODE procurement staff that are here on the call with us today. My name is Paul Sell. I'm the Youth Development Oregon Associate Director overseeing our youth grants process, and I'll turn it over to Jared.
Good morning, everyone. Jared Shaw, Grant Manager and Workforce Analyst. Thanks for being with us today.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Renee House, and I am on the ODE procurement team. And I'm the procurement contract specialist who is the single point of contact on this RFA.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Bethany Moreland. I am also an ODE procurement specialist, but I am just on this call today to help support Renee with the logistics.
Good morning. My name is Tanisha Bishop, and I am YDO's administrative specialist.
Good morning, everyone. Great to see you. My name is Molly Burns. I am a YDO grant manager and re-engagement analyst.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Sally Deck. I'm a YDO grant manager and future ready youth analyst.
Mine next. Good morning, everybody. Brian Detman, Youth Development Director, Youth Development Oregon. I just want to I'll be in the background. This fantastic team of folks from YDO and also from ODE procurement are going to really lead today's session. So appreciation to all of them, and deep appreciation to all of you in attendance. We are excited to bring this opportunity forward and hope that you get the information you're seeking. I know there will be some opportunity to ask some questions. I know the team is also prepared through the RFA that's been developed and this presentation. So again, just thanks for being here this morning, and have a great rest of this morning presentation. Paul, I'll turn it back to you.
All right, thanks, Brian. Tanisha, if we can go to the next slide, we'll get started with the kind of general housekeeping. So as with most of our information sessions, we do ask that if you have questions that you enter them into the Zoom chat. Sally, who just introduced herself, it will be managing those questions, and we will be addressing those throughout the presentations. So little different than some of our other past information sessions is that we're going to stop in some section breaks, because we are recording the answers to our responses to all the questions throughout. So if you can kind of help with those questions that make sense during that time, would be wonderful on it. To answer one of the questions, we will be sharing a PDF version of this presentation for you here in just a few moments. Once I think that's my job, so once I'm done presenting, I'll make sure that that's in the chat. And then just as a reminder, some questions may require some follow-up on our part. So we may not be able to answer all the questions until the official question and answer document is published. And as with all of our information sessions, statements and responses to these questions addressed are considered non-binding until they are published in the official Q&A document, which for this RFA should be published on our website on or around December 27th. Next slide. All right, so with any of our presentations, we'd like to draw back kind of the information, our presentation back to Youth Development Oregon's mission, vision, and values. And so you can see on the screen our mission, our vision, and our equity statement. For this RFA, one of the things that is really a key element to this is around aligning the systems and investing in the communities to ensure that equitable and effective services for youth. This RFA specifically is targeted for youth ages 14 through 24, and with the re-engagement and workforce focuses. Next slide. As part of our youth grants portfolio, you can see there highlighted in red is the Reengagement Collaborative Grant. Again, we call that the RCG. That is what today's session is on. It's interconnected across all of these youth grants portfolios. And so we're going to jump into some of the eligibilities and what that looks like for this RFA specifically. Next slide. There we go. We're going to cover eligibility right at the beginning of this, just so that we are clear on who is eligible to apply. I will cover the general eligibilities, and then Molly, through the scope of her presentation, will cover the more details within that. So next slide. So the eligible organizations to apply, we have two categories. We have 3 of our current grantees or intent to awardee grantees in our youth grants portfolio that are automatically eligible to apply, and that's the Reengagement Opportunity Grant intent to awardee or grantees. We have our Future Ready Oregon intent to awardees or grantees, and then in CI specifically, the Workforce Readiness Initiative. And so if you are one of those grantees, there's nothing additional you have to do to be eligible. If you are not one of those grantees, or you're new to YDO, you want to take a look at attachment E for a list of who is automatically eligible, and then attachment F for the appeal process for an organization which is not listed in attachment E of automatically being eligible. So there are options to do that. Again, please take a look at that around eligibility. So in the next slide, we're going to go ahead and, just as a kind of a reminder, which is again new for us in the RFA process, that attendance at this pre-conference, so all of you listening or joining us today, or if you're watching the recording, that is a part of the requirement to apply in this RFA. So during the application portion of the SM Apply application, you will attest that you have fulfilled this requirement in that. So again, just want to make everybody aware of all of that information. All right, so next slide. So different than a lot of our grants that we currently have out, there is a commitment to re-engagement system building that is really clearly outlined in the scope of the grant that Molly will cover. But in general, the RCG grants are primarily for re-engagement system building work, and this is intended for system level change. This RFA is focused on providing increased services across different service areas and re-engagement zones, which we'll cover in just a few minutes. So in other words, a lot of our other RFAs are for direct service to youth. This one is focused on building systems around the eligible youth as defined within the re-engagement system. Next slide. So when we look at the RCG purpose, there's really 3 main bullet areas that we want to highlight in this presentation. The first is that as an RCG awardee, you'll conduct re-engagement system level work in 2 specific areas: the re-engagement collaborative zone and a grantee's service area. So the re-engagement collaborative zone we'll cover in a little bit more detail, but in general, it's the combination of the regional divide that we have in our other RFAs. And so we've collected and we've gathered those regional areas into a larger area, which we are calling re-engagement collaborative zones. A grantee's service area is a proposed service area that the grantee will outline in their application. The other area of purpose is that it's to improve access to the full spectrum of re-engagement services for eligible youth. So our automatically eligible organizations really focus on that full spectrum, which is re-engagement youth, which is youth moving from re-engagement into workforce, and then really the workforce supports for the youth that our grants typically support. And the third bullet there, to build re-engagement collaborative networks across the zones as well as the service areas. Again, we'll go in more detail to what that looks like, but two key areas or 2 key things to keep in mind is the collaborative networks in both the re-engagement zone and the grantee's service area. So the period for these grants is actually the reimbursement period for these grants will start January 1, 2024 and go through the end of this biennium, June 30th, 2025. The max award for this is $100,000. Next slide. So this next slide is to dive a little bit deeper into the structure of the RFA and what those 2 different areas mean. So like I said in the last slide, the RFA separates the system level work into 2 requirements. is the applicant's proposed service area, which that's going to be defined in your application. And like I said, Molly will go into more detail within that. And then the other area is called the Reengagement Collaborative Zone. On the right of your screen, you'll see that map, which outlines the 4 distinct zones or Reengagement Collaborative Zones. Again, that's a combination of our regions that we have used in our prior RFAs, and we've just made it into the 4 specific areas. So there is no regional requirement in these. The 4 zones, you can see there, we have the metro area, which is in purple on the screen, the hybrid zone, which is both central and eastern Oregon, as well as that northwest corner, coastal corner of Oregon, the south zone, which is that brown area down at the bottom of your screen, and the mid valley, which is the blue. So if you look at those attachments E and F, those are going to be important elements to that work around that structure. So I'm going to go ahead and if we move to the next slide, I think it's to pause for questions and answers. Sally, I don't see any questions in the chat as of yet. Just want to double check that we don't have anything that we need to address.
Nope, I think we're good.
Right. Perfect. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and go off screen, and I'll put that PDF of this presentation in the chat for you and turn it over to Molly.
Okay, thanks, Paul. If we could get the next slide up. At this point in the presentation, I'll be talking about the scope of activities in the RFA. Next slide, please. The scope of activities, which is in the RFA section 2.4, is a section that describes what the successful applicants will be expected to do if awarded a grant. And so we're going to dig a little deeper into these requirements that are listed on the screen here. Next slide, please. To kind of step back and just set a little context, successful Reengagement Collaborative grantees will play a critical role in helping to build the statewide reengagement system in Oregon. The goal of this system is high school completion, and the system is designed to bring youth who have left school or are on the verge of leaving before they have completed a high school credential back to education for high school completion. And I should say, when I say high school credential, I'm talking about a high school diploma or a high school equivalency such as a GED credential. So as you work on the system level change proposals, the first requirement to keep in mind is that you must incorporate partnerships for services for eligible youth in all 4 re-engagement youth eligibility categories. So we need the full spectrum of eligible youth in your applications. And so for those of you who may not be familiar with the criteria for youth eligibility for re-engagement programming, we have the 4 criteria listed on the slide here, as well as, of course, in the RFA. And real briefly, I'm just going to review what those criteria are. Criteria A is for youth who are 14 to 24, who are not enrolled in high school, and they have not yet earned a high school credential. Criteria B is for youth who are defined as a dropout. So they've missed 10 or more consecutive school days, and they have not yet earned a high school credential. In criterion C, we have youth who are aged 14 to 24, who are recommended directly into a re-engagement program from one of the limited entities that are allowed to recommend directly into re-engagement as specified in Oregon law. So we've got those entities listed here. And of course, those youth also have not yet earned their high school diploma or GED. And finally, criteria D is for youth who are 16 to 21, who are enrolled in high school. And the idea here, excuse me, is that they're really on the verge of leaving before completing that high school credential. So the youth are enrolled in high school and they're behind their peers by 3 or more credits, and they have had irregular attendance. So just to kind of sum up, all 4 categories of eligible youth must be incorporated into the system building system change proposals. Next slide, please. So similarly, please keep in mind that your systems level work must incorporate the full spectrum of re-engagement services. The broad areas of re-engagement services are on this slide and covered in more detail in the RFA. And so what we're really looking at is we're really looking at a full continuum of services for re-engaged youth, which is starting with outreach and identification for of youth who have been out of school, including youth who have had significant time out of school without a high school completion, all the way through bringing them back, reconnecting to education, and really getting them onto a solid career and or educational pathway so that post high school completion transition into post-secondary career or education. So this re-engagement collaborative grant system building really needs to incorporate all spheres that are going to help the youth along their journey. Okay, and just one little note that because we are talking about re-engagement, educational services is a component. And so it's always a requirement that youth are re-engaged into structured educational services that lead to high school graduation or GED completion. All right, next slide, please. Okay, so as was mentioned by Paul earlier, the systems level work will be structured into 2 areas. And one of these areas is this very large re-engagement collaborative zone, as is displayed on the slide by the brown, blue, purple, and green areas of the map. And so all eligible organizations listed in the RFA have been geographically grouped into one of these 4 zones, and that your zone assignment is in attachment E of the RFA. It's really important that you check your zone assignment in attachment E. And if you do need to request a change to your zone, you'll need to follow the appeal process in the RFA in section 1.3.2.2. Okay, next slide, please. Successful re-engagement collaborative grant applicants will be coordinating a re-engagement collaboration network of the YDD grantees who have the re-engagement opportunity grants, workforce readiness grants, as well as the Future Ready Oregon youth grants, as well as other re-engagement partners across this zone for service connection and expansion, for professional learning, alignment of services, perhaps for coordination, collaboration, and communication for that full spectrum of re-engagement services and really strengthening services for re-engaged youth. So if awarded a grant, an RCG grant, there's two activities that you're really going to be participating in across that larger zone. The first one is that you will be, along with YDD agency staff, co-coordinating re-engagement convenings in the zone 3 times during this 18-month grant period. The convenings will be in person, except for the hybrid zone, which allows a combination of virtual hybrid meetings for those 3 required convenings. And the second zone activity is a successful RCG awardee will be identifying and implementing zone strategies for effective collaboration in that zone. Next slide, please. Okay, so in addition to those convenings and zone strategies, under this Reengagement Collaborative Grant, you'll also be doing systems level work in your proposed service area. The proposed service area is a geographic region. The proposed systems level work must occur across the entire proposed service area, and it will need to be across 2 or more counties, school districts, established jurisdictional or geographic boundaries, or a combination thereof, or 2 or more agencies within a federally recognized tribe or tribes. One detail to note is that your proposed service area needs to fall primarily within that zone. So again, check attachment E for your zone assignment, and as necessary, take a look at the zone appeal process in the RFA. Okay, next slide, please. So what's the work requirement in the service area? Successful grantees, successful applicants will be conducting system level work to improve access and success for eligible youth, and will be interconnecting all systems of youth service and support across your service area for re-engaged youth. Desired outcomes of this may include improved communication, coordination, may include true pathway access for the re-engaged youth populations, a better and more effective understanding and support, and that whole continuum of support for re-engaged youth possibilities, visibility, and strengthening of re-engagement services in your service area. And when you're thinking about this service area requirement, there's a couple of details to keep in mind. And so the system building may have a research or planning or a designing phase to the work that you're going to be implementing in your service area. So you may be conducting some action research, strategic planning, maybe designing a sustainable model for comprehensive re-engagement services. So there's that design planning stage, which is optional. And the requirement is that you have an implementation stage, which needs to be at least 6 months at the end of the grant, the grant performance period. So design is optional, implementation is required, and we added here that you will be uploading for your service area work, a work timeline showing the phases of your work. And I think Jared may also be touching on this as well a little bit later. Okay, so next slide, please. Oops, actually, we are already on the right slide. So in addition to conceptualizing that systems level work, Another requirement in the service area of that systems level work is that you will assemble cross-sector partners from multiple service spheres, such as K-12 education, higher education, workforce development, supportive services, and that when you're assembling people together, you'll assemble them around a goal for re-engaged youth. And there's some examples of various large areas of goals for bringing people together to work across systems, across sectors within your service area. Okay, next slide. And another work requirement in the service area is that you're building partnerships with the entities that are listed in the Oregon administrative rules. These partners are on the right side of your screen. This is a limited list of entities that can recommend directly into re-engagement services. And so successful applicants will create system level strategy to build partnerships between re-engagement programs and the partners listed. And the requirement for this RFA is not that you establish and build partnerships with all of these entities. It's okay if you have a phased strategy, a phased plan, but you will need to be building partnerships with at least some of the entities in the 18 months of this grant cycle. Okay, next slide, please. All right, so there are reporting requirements. They should not feel that unusual for those of you who have our grants. I will just call out that for this RCG grants, you will be required to have quarterly meetings. It may be a face-to-face meeting, a telephone call, or a video call with the YDD staff, so with your grant manager. Next slide. And a final requirement of this RFA are the communication and collaboration requirements. Again, they shouldn't feel too unusual for those who have had YDO grants. But we did want to highlight in yellow here, there are activities that you'll be doing in the zone. So first, co-facilitation of professional learning, convenings, or gatherings in the zone. And also you'll be asked to present your service area system level work within the zone, within that re-engagement collaboration network in the zone. So at this point, we are going to pause for questions. If we go to the next slide.
Molly, do you
Sorry.
mind going back to that last slide just for a minute? Thank you.
All right. So as Sally is pulling additional questions from the chat, appreciate all those that are putting those questions in the chat so that we can keep a running record of those. And I do see a hand raised, which I'll bump to in just a minute. So a couple of the questions that we haven't answered in the chat, but we're just going to answer here is why do we say youth instead of young adult to refer to the eligible demographic? We use those terms interchangeably, and there's different definitions. Excuse me, I can't talk for some reason. There's some different definitions around where the youth age cuts off. So we use those words interchangeably for referring to eligible people or young adults or young people from ages 14 to 24. A question around the service area includes the northwest corner, which is in green. It's part of the hybrid zone, but also will be falling into a little bit of the blue zone or the Central Valley region. Will our application have to stick to just one zone, or can it include all 5 counties in our application? Your service area has to be primarily has to primarily be in the designated zone, but can include areas outside of that re-engagement zone to meet the service area work within that proposed service area. If we are not awarded funding from the current biennium, but have previously been funded, can we appeal for eligibility to apply? Yes, please refer to RFA section 1.3 as well as attachment F for the appeal process and those requirements. Are required zone activities the only outcome justification to prove re-engagement? Zone activities are only a portion of the required activities as defined by the co-hosting of those collaborative events. A majority of the work will be based within the proposed service area and that system level change in that area. So successful applicants will report on their system level work in the service area that they define in their application. That'll be primarily the required reporting on that. If we already have established networks, can we move into the implementation phase right away in the grant period, meaning no planning or research? And then is there a template for the timeline that Molly discussed? So yes, system level change work can include established, new, and or proposed networks. And so if you are ready to do the implementation stage, that's wonderful and can go ahead and move forward with that if you're a successful applicant. And but it can also be those for those new and or proposed networks, which may take some time to get moving forward with planning and research. So in terms of a template, we do not have a specific template format for that timeline that would be determined by the applicant that best meets your needs. Is there federal involvement of these funds? No, these are general state fund dollars as part of SSA funds that we have carved out of the re-engagement funding that we receive. And then there's a couple more questions, but I'm going to pause there for a second while I read the questions to Molly, make sure I answered what I was supposed to answer.
Yeah, and I was just kind of following on those questions. There's just one more point that I wanted to make. If we're talking about the system work, we're talking about the system work across different spheres. And so I just wanted to contrast that with partnership building for a specific re-engagement program. And so do read the eligibility in the RFA section 1.3, where I think we clearly define, or we better define what we're talking about when we're talking about all eligible youth, all re-engagement services across multiple spheres. And other than that, no, I have nothing else to add.
Thank you, Molly.
Yeah.
So another question that came in around, is work required to encompass the entire zone or just exist within the zone, i.e. one county within the zone? So again, that's where those two different service area or two different areas of work as part of this RFA come into play. So the re-engagement collaborative zone is a larger zone that you will, as part of this application, would be responsible for helping co-host the re-engagement collaboratives that are hosted twice a year within that zone. Now your service or your system level change work would happen within your designated service area or your proposed service area as part of your application. So there's kind of twofold there. So a majority of that work is going to work will be focused on system level change in your defined service area, which Molly covered some of the details, but it has to be expanded across kind of a defined area or region or multiple school districts or counties and things of that sort. So depending on how you define that area, one county could be served within that, but then you would still have those co-hosting responsibilities as part of the collaboratives on that. Molly, do you want to add any detail to that? I feel like I'm maybe missing a point that might be important.
I actually thought you clarified it. So zone, okay. Co-hosting, convenings, your service areas is just where we've got that phase, uploading your timeline, and really you designing what is important in your area with all of those different requirements.
Yeah. Perfect. Thank you. And the next question is, and thank you, Sally, for putting some guidance in those questions as you're Anne-Marie knows. How much funds are available to be awarded? We have a total of 5 awards at 100,000 max per applicant, or in other words, we have 500,000 set aside for those 5 awards. Those awards, 2 will be made in the metro region due to the number of grants in that area, and then 1 in each of the other 3 zones. Sorry, I got my numbers mixed up there. Are there restrictions on faith-based organizations? So I would encourage those organizations to make sure that you review the requirements of eligible applicants. Again, eligible applicants are outlined within the RFA. And just if you have questions, you can definitely bump those to the single point of contact that would help further define the specifics for you. All right, I think, Sally, unless I'm missing things in the chat. Oh, cool. I see some people saying, yes, we answered the questions. So appreciate that feedback. That's always helpful. I did have somebody with their hand raised. I think can more than one grant be awarded in a zone is one of the questions that I think someone was raising their hands. No, we will do the Metro Reengagement Zone will have 2 awards, and then the other reengagement zones will have a single award each in those areas. All right. I will go ahead and turn it back. I don't know who's up next. Or Sally, yeah, double check. Did I miss things?
Yeah, I was answering other questions in the chat, so I didn't hear whether or not you answered the question about how many funds are available to be awarded.
I did.
Okay, great.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. And I think it goes to Jared, right, Molly? All right, Jared, you're on. I'll go back off screen.
Great. Thank you, Paul and Molly. All right, so I'm going to be talking a bit about the actual application and the evaluation items. If we could move to the next slide, please. All right, so if you have completed applications for YDO before, you're probably pretty familiar with what it's going to look like, and it will look similar with some notable changes. But as always, there will be some scored items and some non-scored items when you go into SurveyMonkey Apply to fill out your application. So this is really just a list of the non-scored items that you'll be required to submit. There will be an application information and certification portion where you go in and you just certify that you are able to meet certain requirements. There will be a project title, an executive summary, and an organizational description. And those will be the unscored items in this application. Don't panic if when you log in, you don't see a place to put the project title or the executive summary. That actually comes at the end of the application. So this will kind of be scattered throughout the different tasks, and we'll go more into what those tasks look like as we go through this. But those are the unscored items, and you'll see here the word limit and then the RFA and attachment where you can refer to what that's going to look like in detail. Next slide, please. And so here are the evaluation items. So as always, we will have several questions that you will respond to. So we have the evaluation items listed here 1 through 7, and we have the word limits for each. Again, please refer to the RFA section 4 for those evaluation items. But you'll be answering questions primarily about your service area, the population that you intend to serve, the proposed activities. That really is addressing the proposed activities that you're going to pursue in your service area. And then there's that collaborative work within the zone question. We've got a question on equity and voice, a budget narrative that you'll complete, and an upload that you'll do for your budget, and recommendation forms. And so we'll get into a little bit of what these differences look like. You'll see that in the proposed activities question, there's that timeline upload, that budget narrative that you'll upload, or you'll complete the budget narrative in SurveyMonkey Apply, and you'll upload the budget template. And then the new, really new piece that we have here is recommendation forms that will have to be submitted by at least 3 recommenders. But you can see the points that you can be awarded for each of those evaluation items. And again, please look at section 4, specifically section 4.3 for those questions. Next slide, please. All right, so the timeline upload, again, in evaluation item 3, we've talked about that timeline upload where you'll have to upload an 18-month timeline outlining the milestones of the project. And that's going to be from January 1st of 2024 through June 30th of 2025. As Molly and Paul mentioned, there is that optional phase for planning, design, or research. And then that required phase of implementation to begin no later than January of 2025 and run through the end of the grant, June 2025. Again, there's no format, there's no template for how you should complete this timeline and upload it. It's just an attachment. You can simply attach a Microsoft Word document if you'd like. but we want to know what your proposed timeline is. And so again, as Molly mentioned, that required implementation phase, that really is to say that there should be something, some project, system level project that you are going to implement. And it shouldn't be just, you know, for instance, pulling together a group for a monthly meeting. Although that is important, we do want to see some sort of project that has an implementation phase. So that will be required. Again, look at section RFA 2.4.4, 3.2.6, and 4.2.3 for more specifics on that. Next slide, please. Then the budget upload. In prior RFAs, I think some of you may be familiar with uploading a budget in the application. This is just going to be when you go into that task in SurveyMonkey Apply, there will be a form that you download for your budget, and you'll complete it and you'll upload it again. Again, that's an 18-month budget, January 1st, 2024 through June 30th of 2025. That should be pretty simple when you see it in the task, but that is required. And next slide, please. And this is the pretty new thing that we're doing this time. So this is important. So this RFA will require 3 letters of recommendation from current, former, or intended partners in the project, people who can really speak to your ability to carry out your project plan. So when you log into SurveyMonkey Apply, in task 2, you'll see, and we'll show a screenshot of what this will look like. There will be 5 separate tasks that you'll have to complete for your evaluation items. This is task 2. When you go into task 2, it will say request a recommendation, and you will be the one to send a recommendation link to 3 recommenders. There are instructions in that tab that will show you how to do that, but essentially you choose 3 people to send the recommendation link to, and they will receive an email, again, with a long list of instructions on how to complete the recommendation form. When they click on that link, it will take them into a recommendation form in SurveyMonkey Apply with various questions that they will have to respond to. All letters must be received by RFA closing. And when you go into the task, in task 2, you can see when your recommenders have submitted that recommendation. So if it is incomplete, it will just show that it's incomplete, and there will be a check mark next to it when it is complete. So it's your responsibility to make sure that you're going back in there and you're checking and that you're following up with your recommendations, your recommenders, if they have not completed it, because you will not be able to submit the application without those at least three recommendation letters completed. You can send more than 3 recommendation links if you'd like, but it's a minimum of 3 recommendation letters that must be uploaded. And if you could move to the next slide, please. These are the requirements that have to be met in those letters. Again, please review this section. This is evaluation item number 7 in the RFA, that's 4.2.7. And we go into specific requirements for these recommendation letters in section 3.2.7. All recommendation letters must meet these requirements. This is a scored evaluation item. So if certain elements here are missed, we will deduct points, points will be deducted from those letters. So just make sure that they are completed on the form that is sent out through SurveyMonkey Apply in that email. They should indicate that the recommender believes the applicant should be selected to conduct re-engagement system work in the service area. They should indicate the quality and duration of the partnership. They should be from applicants' current, past, or intended partners. At least 2 letters must be from organizations within the proposed service area, and up to 1 may be from organizations within the zone. 1 of the 3 letters must be completed by an organization conducting 1 or more re-engagement services. 1 of the 3 letters must be completed by an organization conducting workforce readiness services. And each letter must be from a different organization, although federally recognized tribes may submit recommendation forms from agencies within their tribe, but also at least include 1 from outside of the tribe. So please review those 2 sections, 3.2.7 for those specifics. This will be in the email that your recommender receives. So they will have those there, and this will also be in your task in the recommendation form when you go into SM Apply. So you'll be able to see what the recommender will have to respond to. All right, next section, please. Next slide, please. All right, ranking of applicants. Pretty simple. So once the applications are received, The applications will be assigned to their zone based on where the service area falls. And as Paul mentioned, the highest scoring applications in the 3 zones, the mid zone, south zone, and hybrid zone, will be awarded. So the 1 top application, and then the 2 highest scoring applications will be awarded in the metro zone. All right, next slide, please. Any questions on those application elements?
There aren't any questions in the chat.
Perfect.
Great.
Thank you, Jared. And so,
All right.
We do have a question. Logan has his hand raised.
Yes, Logan.
Hi, I didn't think I could type it fast enough. I'm sorry. So for the hybrid zone, the highest scoring application for the hybrid zone, since that's divided into 2 parts of the state, is that still going to be 1 awardee? For
Correct.
Northwest and Central and Eastern? Okay,
Yes.
thanks.
yep. And I do see a question that came into the chat. Are the zones based on population? Now, the zones are actually based off of the number of grantees we had in those specific areas and common groupings from our other CI, workforce readiness, future ready, and re-engagement opportunity grants. So that's where those zones came from, based off of our regional divide, our designations that we had in our other RFAs.
Great. And I did want to add one thing about the recommendation form before we move on. Just let your recommender know, and this is in the instructions that they'll receive, but it is a one-time link. So when they access that link, they must complete it at that time in the same browser. So if they access the link and then they just take a look at it and close out of it, they will not be able to access it again, and you'll have to contact the single point of contact and we can reset that. But just to avoid that, we have the questions listed there so they can plan their recommendation letters before they actually go in to fill out the form.
Perfect. Hey, Jared, I did have a question that come in, Sally. I'll get it added. It asked for a recording. So the recording of this presentation will be posted within over the next week, depending when we get it cleaned and ready to post on our website. So you can access that and download that at any time once it's posted on our website. Thanks.
Thanks. All right. If there are no other questions, I think we can move on to next slide. Great. We're going to talk a little bit about how to actually apply in SurveyMonkey Apply. Next slide, please. So many of you, if you filled out applications for us, you're probably familiar with this process, but this will happen in the SurveyMonkey Apply portal. Pretty simple. We've got the address here to go to. If you are a first-time user, you'll have to register, and there are frequently asked questions there on the website for how to do that. And here's a link to a resource page here. So pretty simple. Just go to that link, and you'll be able to create you'll register as a new user if you don't already have one, and you'll complete the application. Any questions with that, you can just reach out to the single point of contact if you have any technical issues. All right, next slide, please. This is important, the green submit button. So this is the final button that you will submit, that you'll click to submit the application. Again, this is a screenshot when you're in the application of what it will look like. You will see a list here of your tasks, and there will be 5 tasks. So again, application information and certification sheet, request a recommendation, which we do recommend that you send to your recommenders early on, so they have time to complete it, and you won't be able to submit the application until they are all complete. The application narrative section, the budget narrative and upload section, and then the final task, review, certify, and submit. You can jump between tasks, so as long as you save the task, you can jump between them to continue working on them. You just will not be able to submit the application again until your recommendation forms are uploaded from your recommenders. And you will see check marks next to each of these tasks as you complete them. However, the application is not submitted until you go back up to this pane in the left and you hit submit. Once you do that, you'll receive an email confirmation from SurveyMonkey Apply, and the application is submitted. Next slide, please. Timeline. All right, next slide, please. All right, so pre-application conference today, that's obviously today. December 20th is a big date to keep in mind. That is the date for your appeals to be submitted. So an appeal to be considered an eligible organization or an appeal to change your pre-assigned zone. And that's also the deadline for any questions or requests for clarification. That is December 20th at 4 p.m. Those answers to those questions, we anticipate getting back to you approximately December 27th, about a week later. Application close is January 17th at 4 p.m. And then we anticipate the issuance of those notice of intent to awards about March 1st of 2024. Again, there will be a protest period as always after that for 7 days. And so yeah, spring of 2024 is when we anticipate those notifications going out. And that's it. Any questions?
All right, we got a couple people saying thank you, so appreciate that. Totally understand if you need to sign off, but we will stay on to address any questions that you might have.
I do have one more quick one. I'm sorry. Oh, sorry. Naya's got her hand up like an appropriate person. I'll wait.
Hi. I was just wondering, so I'm going to be applying as an appeal organization, but most of the people who would give us a recommendation letter that we work with are also apply for the grant. And so it's not really a question, it's just kind of like a concern that I have, because we serve the BIPOC community. And so some of these organizations, they get funding and then they work with us to, get some of the kids to come and that kind of thing. And so I'm just concerned a little bit about making it into competitive. I don't know. I'm just sharing. I guess. What advice do you have around that? Have you guys seen that before? Where someone was awarded and then one of their community partners applied in a next round and needed to use the previous awardee as a recommendation letter.
So thank you for the question. I'm getting some echo. I'm not sure why. I think it's kind of a difficult question, or the comment, I guess I should say. I think it's a difficult question to answer. What we're trying to encourage with this is the collaboration in the service area. So we want, about expanding services within the designated or proposed service area, not designated, excuse me. And so I would encourage you to talk with those folks and see if there's a joint application or other things that you can do to work collaboratively together in expanding services in wherever those services are going to be provided.
Thank you. That was a great answer.
All right. Okay. So Logan, we'll jump back to you. And again, I'm getting some echo. I'm not sure why.
Thank you. I guess I just wanted some clarification on applying within the zones, because I think what we will likely end up doing is, since the services need to be primarily in one of the regions, and we're kind of split between two, we would probably just pick one, but it would be really tough for us, I think, as an organization to just single out 2 counties and leave 3 out, or vice versa, in terms of offering a service. So if we, I just want to be clear that so long as we communicate that primary services will be within, the blue region, for instance, Central Valley or Mid Valley, but then have spillover into, say, like Tillamook County, for instance, is that any kind of red flag from your perspective, or is that inappropriate? Because we couldn't really, I think, viably cover 5 counties with the kind of support that we're hearing that we need from partners with this single grant, but we could certainly kind of spill over one to the other a bit. So
okay, so no, I think I appreciate the clarifying question on it. So those that are automatically eligible, which are the future ready awardee, current future ready, intent to awardees, re-engagement opportunity, and CI workforce readiness folks, they're already in the designated zones, and so they've been assigned into those areas. That would be the area that you would apply in. And then there's two kind of responsibilities for successful applicants. One will be coordinating that the re-engagement collaborative across that zone. So yours zone, I believe, is the designated zone would be the hybrid, and so you'd help do the re-engagement collaborative, which is twice a year organization and co-hosting with YDO. Then your service area would be defined in your application, which can overlap into those different regions, because that's going to be the primary work that you're doing for the grant itself, and then helping to co-host the re-engagement collaboratives in that zone. And I want to jump back just to make sure that Molly and Jared don't have something to add on it. I was kind of trying to sum those up. I don't know.
I don't have anything to add to that.
Okay. All right. Logan, did that help answer that?
Yeah, that's very helpful. I appreciate it.
All right, perfect. Sounds good. And please don't quote me on your collaborative zone, because I am not 100% positive what zone you're in. So please do refer to the RFA on that.
I will. Thanks. I'll talk to Sally too.
Awesome. All right. Other questions? We can't necessarily see everybody on the screen. So, but again, if you are good to go, please feel free to sign off. We'll hang on to address any questions and capture those in the Q&A document as we move forward. All righty. All right, Tanisha, I think we can probably, oh, I do see a hand raised. Kathy Smith.
Oh, there we are. Yes, hi. I do have a question, kind of a follow-up to the previous question. I just want to make sure, because we are in zone 4, and geographically zone 4 is huge. So if we should be awarded the grant and be the convener of the, of the YDO twice a year meetings, we would be given the contact for all of the people in the zone, right? Or is that something we have to hook up with them through knowing in the RFA that you sent out, so we know which grants were awarded in our zone? So are we going to be connecting with them directly, or will we be given some contact? Because many of them are geographically inaccessible and easily.
No, that's a great question. I appreciate the clarifying, especially for that zone. So that's why the re-engagement collaboratives, or the re-engagement zone, the bigger zone, is listed as co-hosting, because YDO staff will be working in conjunction with the successful applicant in that area to prepare, organize, and have those convenings happen. So it's nothing that you would have to go out on your own with. You'd be working directly with YDO staff in that element of the application, or that element of the grant itself. So, Kathy, did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Perfect. And I guess I would also add and note that hybrid section specifically is called hybrid because of the amount of just area of Oregon that is included in that. So we recognize that convening will obviously look probably a little different, being that there's 10 hours in between some of those locations. So that would be something that will be figured out with a successful applicant on how to best coordinate that. All right. I'm not seeing any additional questions. So Tanisha, I think we can probably start having people exit out unless they have questions. Again, thank you to everybody, Molly, Jared, and Sally, for helping present this as well.